Welcome to satsang. You need to realize that the present moment is all you ever have. The sense of power or aliveness that is there. This is what they talk about the word trust. Trusting in life. To have a trust. To trust. It's hard to make yourself trust when your primordial condition is fear, which is the primordial human condition in the mind-identified state. Fear and trust cannot go together because the trust is simply the absence of fear. So you cannot make yourself trust, or even the affirmations you have won't do it. You can even repeat affirmations and put them on your bathroom mirror. You write there, I trust in life. I trust that life is supporting me. But you eventually have to go even beyond the affirmation. And the trust arises naturally where you actually don't need any more affirmations. Because you're there. The reality of it is there. Affirmations are maybe a transitional stage when you haven't quite arrived at the reality of it. Then you may say, I'm wealthy, but when you have 50 million in the bank, you take off the affirmation from your bathroom mirror. Because from that point, it's obvious that you know you're wealthy. You don't need to say it anymore. For example, Bill Gates doesn't have the affirmation on his bathroom mirror. Given that example to make it clear, when the reality is obvious and when it is there, you don't need the signpost anymore. Because every affirmation is a kind of a signpost that points you in the right direction. But a time comes and the signpost isn't needed anymore because you have arrived. So the word trust means when you feel you go into the inner body, and then there is the first very subtle, and then what you feel increasingly more intensely, the power of aliveness, the stillness, and yet there is an energy, incredible energy behind that. That is on the most fundamental level. You are that. I am that. I'm not the little me in the head anymore. And that lives and acts through you. That power is there. And when you know yourself as that is trust. Then suddenly trust becomes to be your natural state. It's no longer something that you need to figure out how to get there. Trust is your natural state. So that even the conceptual trust disappears. Because it's all natural, you don't even have a word for it anymore. It's experiential right now. Many concepts disappear when the reality that to which the concept points arrives. The very mental concept of it is not really necessary anymore. Eckhart says that he rarely talks about love, although he did in the beginning of this talk. But he doesn't talk about it too often. It arises naturally out of the state of presence. And you don't need to keep the concept in your head and tell yourself that I'm loving, I'm a loving being. It is not needed anymore. In his talks, Eckhart Tolle says that he is sometimes surprised when people tells him that things like, oh, you are so present. because, he is kind of present all the time. And they told him that he is so patient. And he says that he didn't know that he was patient. He didn't realize that. I didn't know that I am patient. It never occurred to me that I am patient. I didn't have the whole concept at all. Because the patience still means that you're trying hard to be there. There's some kind of effort involved in being patient. But when the true patience is there, you don't even know that you're patient. You're just present. Patience still means that you're halfway there and halfway not there. You're practicing to be patient. Maybe you're telling yourself like, okay, I'll be patient for half an hour now, but then after half an hour I will have enough of that. But it doesn't work like that. So it's wonderful when the world of these whole concepts are not really needed anymore. But in your lives, there may be a stage that they're really helping you. They may be helpful. There's a stage when the affirmation on the bathroom mirror is okay. Doing affirmations is okay. But there is also comes a time when you go beyond that. You wouldn't want to be staring at a signpost if you want to get to, a city like Rome, for instance. Otherwise, you're gonna be one of these collectors of signposts. They have a whole bunch of signposts stored up, and then they compare them. It compares to that one, and this tradition, and he said that, and he said this. And if you become a collector of signposts, then it's hard to let go, because you have a precious collection now. So there is a time that you want to go beyond that. And there is a time that the signposts are useful. Many things in this world can teach you the state of no mind. Silence can teach you the state of no mind. Animals, as teachers, can teach you the state of no mind. There are many things that can teach you. Silence is an incredible teacher. Silence when you're at home. Silence out in nature. Simply to become aware of that dimension, the state of no mind. There is a shift inside you. Stillness arises the moment you become aware of silence, because the mind is noise. So you use that as your teacher. Silence teaches you that state. You only have to be open to it. For most people, silence doesn't even exist. They feel uncomfortable in the silence. They are making noise to disturb that silence. And if they can't make any noise, their mind gets noisier. The more silent the other world is, the more noisier the mind gets, as a resistance against to that silence. And yet it is very simple to just listen or be aware of the silence. to mind, that's not a nice thing to do. And yet, at that moment, this consciousness that is beyond mind arises. The moment you become aware of silence, the inner silence is there. And then it's no longer just a silence. There's a quality to it. There's an aliveness and a preciousness to it. And of course, that is not understandable through the mind. There is a goodness to it. There's something unbelievable in that. It's like some vast power enveloping you within and without. And that vast power is incredibly benign. It's actually, the only way I can put it is, it is love in the deepest sense, because it is the oneness. If we think that what is love, if we ask ourselves, we can say that it is the recognition of oneness. Oneness of knowing yourself as the other. The oneness is love. And these statements are more like poetic statements, because you can't figure out mentally what I'm saying right now. But I'm only pointing to that state verbally. There's a vast power in the silence. That is why somebody said that the silence is the language that God speaks. Then everything else is a bad translation. So it is something infinitely precious. And it is far more than silence. We are just using that word right now. There is an infinite power within and without. And it has a gentleness to it, and there's an incredible power to it. And it is love itself. It sounds strange, but that is how it is. It is always there. When it's not there, means you cut yourself off from it. And the inner and outer merge in that. Even the entire energy field of your body is silent, but alive. And sometimes human mind bothers that state, of course. The silence, the inner silence, we can call it the stillness. It's very helpful to use other silence as a teacher, especially in nature. And then after a while, you don't even need that anymore. Because wherever you go, you have the inner silence there. And even in the middle of a city, in a noisy street, there's a stillness inside. And we are not dependent on outer silence, which now it is back. But whether that machine or that car is going or not going, it doesn't affect the inner state. But until you become deeply established in the inner stillness, or the inner stillness has emerged more fully, it is very helpful to use silence as your teacher, the outer silence. I mean, you don't need any other. If that were the only teacher you have, it will be quite enough. If you never read another book, or you've learned any other spiritual teaching, or you never went to another workshop, or you listened to another audio or video, that only teaching, the silence, is enough. And all you need to do is to just remember to listen to the silence whenever possible. That's all you need. Through that, the new consciousness, the stillness, will emerge more and more. And then later, there's a meeting of inner and outer silence. We can call it oneness. At this moment, silence is teaching. You may find you drift out of silence and then move back into it, and out of it, mind comes in, and then you move back into it. That is fine. One of the most profound statements in the Bible: be still and know that I am God. So when you see a negative pattern in your mind, you might be asking yourself, what is the most effective way to dissolve these negative patterns that are happening constantly in our minds? These mental negative patterns caused by emotional and conditioned sense of self, of course. There is also collective patterns that we hold. Waiting is one of the examples of collective patterns that we hold. Almost everybody has that. And there may be other patterns in you that you detect that are to do with your personal life. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a simplest thing. When you see a man with a beard and dark hair, you might feel anxious because you realize that maybe he looks like your father and you didn't have a good relationship with him in the past. Just any pattern, collective or personal, when you detect it, there is something more at that moment than that which you see. There is this seeing of it before the pattern absorbed your consciousness completely. Before you wear it, before you become it. You are the waiting, anxious, and somewhat irritated person. There is no space around the irritation, around the stress of that moment. There's no space around it because you're in it. And then suddenly you see it. And one could say it is a stepping back and watching your thoughts. Perhaps that is the deeper meaning of retreat. Because you're retreating not only from the world that you usually move in, you have to retreat also from the world in your head. You just step back and something arises that is not conditioned, and that is pure, simple, miraculous consciousness, awareness, presence, whatever you want to call it. And that is the part in you that is not conditioned. Everything else is conditioned. The seeing, that is an energy field I'm using, seeing metaphorically here, it's not necessarily with your eyes. The noticing, the seeing, you may feel it. There is the presence in which it is felt, which means suddenly there is space around that. And so it could be anything that you notice in yourself. It could be a compulsive behavior. It could be a compulsive reaction. Almost everything is compulsive. When you're not there as the witnessing presence, your entire movement of thought is compulsive. You can't stop, or you think you can't stop. The mind loves to tell you that you cannot stop. And you make a problem out of that, which leads to further thinking. You ask yourself, why can't I stop my mind? I mean, what's wrong with me? I've been doing meditation for years, then there's no point going on to this process. And then, whenever that negative pattern keeps continuing in your mind, you believe in every thought that you hold at that moment. And then suddenly you step back and you watch those thoughts. And that's where you meet presence. That's where you are, the presence. Most of us are living in an anxious mind state, a stressful mind state, and most of the time we are not able to get out of our heads. You can simply, while listening to me, try to not do anything else but listen to me. And sit somewhere where it is comfortable for you. You can sit on the chair in a good posture, or you can just lay down in a bed, doesn't really matter. And first, you may want to try feeling your hands as you are sitting here and listening to me. Because you are restless, your entire attention is still lodged in the head and in the mind. And the mind must feel either restless or anxious or totally bored sitting here and listening to me today. So if you cannot get out of that, you can simply begin by feeling the inner energy field in your hands. And yes, you feel there's an aliveness there. You can feel that there is a hand, not just externally, but internally. If you close your eyes and somebody asked you, Is your left hand still there? For a moment, you would have to internally, so to speak, look for it. And then you would feel something. The question here is, how do you know that it is still there? Because it's not touching anything, you're not moving it. And then, of course, you will know because you can feel it. I can feel this energy. That is how I know that the left hand is still there. Not a memory that it was there when I last looked, because otherwise your answer will come from the memory. And again, these things to the mind seem insignificant, but they have tremendous significance. To begin to inhabit the body, which takes you out of inhabiting the mind exclusively. If you can feel your left hand or your right hand, you can also feel other parts of the body. You have to just start somewhere that becomes the entry point into the body. I'm speaking to those people who are either bored out of their minds. If you were brought out of your mind, you will be okay. That is the key here. But those who are still bored in their minds or are feeling restless and thereby missing the essence of this practice, you need to get into your body. Get in there. Feel the legs, the feet, the hands, the arms. So if you can feel one hand, you can also feel the other hand simultaneously. You feel them both at the same time. The feeling of hand, feet. You can feel both feet also as you feel your hands. Subtle at first. Some people feel almost like a tingling sensation, but some people feel a warmth. And then can you feel the trunk of your body, the belly? Look for it. Sometimes belly is very helpful to be in there. Taking one deep breath or 2 or 3 deep breaths and following the breath with your attention and feel the abdomen. Feel the abdomen rising as you breathe into the belly. And for a moment, there's a cessation. The belly is full and then you breathe out. So breathing a few times into the deep belly breath, which means you have to follow. It's not just a practice, an external practice. The essence here that you follow the breath with your attention and then you move into the belly. So the attention leaves the head and moves into the body. So you breathe into the belly and there you could say you're in the center of the body. And once you breathe it in a few times into the belly, you can actually feel the energy field of your belly. And you rest there. And from there, it radiates out energy into the rest of the body. Then you may notice when you look at not only the images of the Chinese fat Buddha with a huge belly who laughs all the time because he has no problems left, toothless old man with a huge belly. Whatever you say to him, you tell your problems to him and he will laugh at you. But you may also notice that the Indian Buddhas and other Southeast Asian Buddhas, most of them have a very slight protrusion in the belly region. So there is a little bit of slide there because they rest here. Their center of gravity is not in the head, as it is with modern humans, Western especially, but of course the whole world has become Western. So the center of gravity is not in the head. The center of gravity is in the center of your physical perceived body, but it goes beyond body. So you rest there. And so to sense that field of aliveness is beautiful. It takes you out of the head, the problematic head. Your attention moves down here. You unite with the all-pervasive intelligence that is beyond the mind that inhabits your body, that is only an expression of the one intelligence, the intelligence that lives in your body as the life energy that regulates thousands of complicated functions, complicated from the point of view of the human mind, that regulates, coordinates thousands of functions in the body simultaneously. Everything is just right. If one thing slightly adjusted, the body will die immediately. You would collapse. Temperature, heart rate, lungs, circulation, innumerable things that you could spend the next 5,000 years analyzing how the human body works, and you still wouldn't get to the end of it. And that's only the outer body. So there is an intelligence at work that is vast. So if you can feel your body, that is an entry point into that vastness. And the deeper you go, if you do it for yourself, you can do it with your eyes closed at first, so that you become familiar with inhabiting the body and realize as you go deeper that it's not really about the body. It is about sensing that vast spaciousness that is there. It is here. Vast spaciousness. So you enter this spaciousness through the body. And then everything comes to life once your body comes to life. And then you look around and open your eyes without losing the inner sense of body. Then you feel like everything is more alive suddenly. It participates in that because you're not deadening it anymore with mental abstractions, concepts, labels. You realize that it has always been alive.